Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Have you ever felt like you're stuck? Like you're looking someone else's story, trapped by like all these expectations and the weight of history.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of the deep dive we're taking today,
Okay.
exploring what happens when like your past and your present, they kind of collide in the most unexpected ways.
Interesting.
And we're going to be looking at all this through this book, Snowy Day, and other stories. It's a collection of short stories
Okay.
by this acclaimed uh, South Korean director and writer, Lee Chang-dong.
I've heard of him.
If you're into like raw human experiences and stories that really make you think,
Mm-hmm.
then go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe because we've got a lot to unpack.
Sounds good.
Oh, and don't forget you can find a link to the book down in the description below.
Awesome.
So what's really striking about this collection is how Lee Chang-dong, he pulls from his own life. He grew up in South Korea,
Right.
a country that's been through like dictatorship and a ton of political turmoil.
Yeah, definitely a lot of material to work with.
It's not just fiction, you know what I mean? It's like a window into a real lived reality.
That's what makes it so powerful, right? You're not just reading a story, you're experiencing a piece of history.
And that context is like so important because Lee
Absolutely.
Chang-dong, he even questioned like, was writing even the right response to this crazy time,
Oh, wow.
He even quoted Adorno, who famously said that to write poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric.
That's heavy.
It really makes you think, right? Of like, what's the role of art when everything's going like haywire?
Yeah, it's like, can beauty even exist in the face of such horror?
And that tension between like expressing yourself and then grappling with like all this societal injustice, it's like woven throughout these
You can
stories.
feel it, yeah.
It's like he's trying to make sense of a world where you have beauty and brutality all mixed up together.
It's a world we all know, right? Even if we haven't lived through something as extreme as what Lee Chang-dong experienced.
Right. And I think that's what makes these stories so captivating. It's not just about the plot, it's about like what's going on beneath the surface.
Yeah, the questions that linger long after you finish reading.
Exactly.
Like, let's take Snowy Day, for instance.
Okay.
You've got this really stark setting, right? Pristine snow, it's all beautiful and quiet. I could picture it. But then, bam, you're hit with the harsh reality of military life. And in the middle of all this is this woman who's visiting a soldier at the base,
Okay.
only to find out that he's passed away.
Oh, geez.
It's heartbreaking, and you really feel her isolation, this feeling of being trapped in a system that just doesn't care.
And the snow almost becomes like a character itself.
Oh, that's
It's vast and silent, reflecting her inner turmoil.
It's like a mirror to her grief.
And what about the sergeant, the one who steps in to help her?
Ah, yes, that's such an interesting detail. He's not required to do that, but he goes out of his way to help her navigate the military bureaucracy.
He does, yeah.
It makes you wonder, what's his motivation?
Yeah, why does he care?
Maybe he's seeking some kind of meaning in his own role, trying to find a connection amidst all the coldness and rigidity.
It's so subtle, but it adds so much to the story.
It does. It raises all these questions about individual choices and compassion, especially in a system that seems designed to crush both.
Definitely makes you think.
Now, if we switch gears to A Lamp in the Sky,
Okay.
we see a different kind of loss.
Mm-hmm.
It's a father, a year after his child has died.
Oh, wow.
He goes to the Han River to scatter his ashes, and he meets this flower shop owner.
Okay.
And she's terrified of, get this, radioactive fallout from Chernobyl.
That's right. I forgot about that detail.
Yeah, it's easy to miss, but for people who lived through that time, that fear was so real.
It was a constant worry, right?
It adds another layer to the whole grief and loss thing.
Like, even nature itself can be a threat.
Exactly. You've got nature's cycle of life and death, which is already pretty harsh. And then on top of that, you've got this man-made threat looming over everything.
Geez, a double whammy of fear.
And the father, he's trying to find meaning, after losing his child. I don't know if you noticed this, but the image of him wrapping those delicate flowers.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It's like a tiny act of defiance, a way to hold on to beauty even when everything else is falling apart.
It's powerful.
And then there's the goldfish.
Right. The daughter thinks they can survive in the river.
Even though her father knows it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's that belief, that hope that really stands out.
It's like life, like this stubborn little flame that refuses to be snuffed out.
Exactly. And I think that image, it sets the tone for the rest of the book. These are stories about people facing loss, searching for meaning, trying to find their place in a world that often feels indifferent.
It's something we can all relate to, I think.
Absolutely. We've all felt lost at some point, haven't we?
For sure.
And these stories, they offer a glimpse into how others have navigated those dark waters.
Yeah, it's like we're not alone in our struggles.
Not at all. And that's a powerful thing to realize. And those struggles, they get even more intense in War Trophy.
Oh yeah, War Trophy, that's a heavy one.
Yeah, it takes us into some pretty dark territory. It's about this group of friends, and they're reunited around their dying friend, Jiangsu.
Right, and Jiangsu, he was like a serious political activist back in the day.
Exactly. So you can feel the weight of their shared history, all that unspoken guilt and regret just hanging over them.
And then there's that mysterious object, the War Trophy itself.
Oh, yeah, that thing.
It's never actually described, which makes it even more creepy.
Right. Li Chang-dong leaves it open to interpretation. Like he's making us confront our own ideas about political dissent and what it costs, on a personal level.
It's like he's asking, was it worth it?
Exactly. And some people think the trophy represents, like, the self-destructive side of their activism, how the fight for justice ended up consuming them.
But couldn't it be something else? Like, maybe a piece of their idealism that got shattered?
That's a good point, because it's called a trophy, but it doesn't seem like anyone's actually celebrating anything.
It's more like a burden they're all carrying.
And the fact that each friend gets a piece of it after Jiangsu dies, it just adds another layer to that, right?
Yeah, it's like a physical manifestation of their guilt.
Something they can't escape.
Which brings us to Bonsu. His story really highlights that whole struggle to escape the past.
Yeah, he's totally haunted by it. His feelings for Mija, Jiangsu's ex, and his own insecurities, it's a lot.
You could tell he's looking for some kind of forgiveness, maybe even a way to connect with Jiangsu through Mija.
But it just backfires, and he ends up feeling even more alone.
And the setting, the hotel, it's so artificial, so staged.
Right, like they're trying to find a real connection in this place that's all about fleeting encounters.
And that just makes their loneliness even worse.
And the image of Bonsu scattering Jiangsu's ashes only to be, like, engulfed by them.
Oof, that's powerful.
It's like a metaphor for how the past can suffocate you even when you're trying to move on.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if you could ever truly get over something like that.
And from that feeling of being suffocated, we're thrown into, there's a lot of shit in Nakjian.
Man, that title's like a punch in the gut.
Right, and the setting, a city under construction, it's a perfect symbol of how unstable everything was in South Korea at that time.
It's not just the physical filth, it's like this deeper sense of decay, like everything's falling apart.
Yeah, and then you have these two half-brothers, Junshik and Minu.
Living totally different lives.
Junshik's the successful one, the teacher with the comfortable life, while Minu's the activist, always on the run.
It's crazy how different they are considering their family.
And what's interesting is how Li Chang-dong flips the whole idea of morality on its head.
You mean with Jinchik?
Yeah, he seems like he's got it all figured out, but then we learn about his past and the compromises he made.
And suddenly, his perfect life isn't so perfect anymore.
It's like he built his whole life on top of a pile of garbage, and it's all starting to stink.
And his reunion with Minu, it forces him to face that, right?
Yeah, he can't hide from the truth anymore.
And that scene where he breaks down, covered in all the muck of Nacheon.
It's gross, but it's also kind of satisfying, you know?
Like he's finally being baptized in the reality he's been trying to avoid.
Exactly, and it makes you think, can you really change without acknowledging all that ugliness around you?
Deep stuff.
And speaking of ugliness, Burning Paper shows us how trauma can really mess with a family.
That's the one where the father gets arrested for being a spy, right?
Yeah, it's a reminder of how political stuff can have these ripple effects, hurting families in ways you wouldn't expect.
Like Youngjin, the son, he's tried to distance himself from his dad's past.
But his dad's arrest forces him to reevaluate everything.
That prison visit, man, that was tough.
Seeing his dad as this broken man, totally stripped of his dignity.
It's like all the Youngjin's illusions about his dad just shattered.
And then that final scene, the burning of the paper money.
So symbolic.
It's like Youngjin honoring his dad, but also letting go of the past, accepting that he can't change what happened.
Yeah, it's a powerful way to end the story.
And that acceptance, facing the truth even when it hurts, it's a theme that runs through all these stories. And that need to confront the truth, it's like even stronger in The Night He Came.
Yeah, that one really got to me. It's told from Granny's perspective, right?
Right, this elderly woman who's haunted by her husband and disappearing like decades ago.
It's like the past is always there following her.
It shows how political violence can like scar people across generations.
And she's literally seeing ghosts.
Yeah, they represent all the trauma she's bottled up inside.
Makes you think about how we deal with our own ghosts, you know?
Totally, and her relationship with her daughter-in-law shows how tough it is to move on when the past is still so present.
Granny's clinging to tradition, trying to find comfort.
While her daughter-in-law just wants to build a new life, leave it all behind.
It's like they're speaking different languages.
And then a detective shows up, looking for Granny's son, Sun-ho.
Uh-oh.
He's involved in anti-government stuff, so it's like the past is coming back to bite them.
And Granny just loses it. She tells the truth about her husband.
It's a huge moment for her.
Breaking the silence after all those years.
It's like she's finally free.
And it made me think, sometimes you got to speak up, even when it's scary.
Right, and we see that theme of women finding their voices throughout the book.
Remember how we were talking about the women in these stories? Like, are they victims or are they something more?
Mm-hmm.
I think Lee Chang-dong shows us that they're way more complex than that.
They're resilient. They're making choices even when the world is trying to shut them down.
Like the woman in Snowy Day.
Or Janchik's wife, and there's a lot of shit in Nachyeon, calling him out on his BS.
Even Shinhai and Gohan Bodea working in that awful mining town.
She goes through so much exploitation, but she still finds ways to resist.
That story was rough, man.
Yeah, it's brutal, but Shinhai's little acts of defiance, they give you some hope.
Like when she refuses to take a ticket.
Or when she stands up to the police.
She's not letting them break her.
And even though we don't know what happens to her in the end, her leaving Gohang is a powerful statement.
She's still searching for something better.
Exactly, and I think all these women, they represent the struggle to find your place in a world that doesn't always want you there.
It's about fighting for your own space, your own voice.
And that's what makes Lee Chang-dong's writing so powerful. He shows us the darkness, but also the strength that people find within themselves.
And he does it in a way that feels both personal and universal.
These stories are rooted in South Korea, but the emotions they explore, there's something we can all connect with.
Loss, grief, searching for meaning. It's all there.
So as we wrap on our deep dive into Snowy Day and other stories,
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
I want to leave you with a question. What image or moment from these stories stuck with you? What does it say about our own search for meaning in this crazy world?
Let's know in the comments below.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, share it with your friends, spread the word.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.
See y'all next time.